Today I'm going to show you a little bit about Shamanic Phurba. Phurba are like a sort of magic dagger which are used to direct energy. They're sort of somewhere between a dagger and a wand. So they're used for healing, and they're used for tuning into the patient, the client, when the shaman's doing a healing. They're actually sent sometimes to look through into the other worlds. So the shaman projects themselves, they project their spirit or their soul into the Phurba and then send it to look for information, to find out maybe what's wrong with the patient. They're used for pinning down negative energy, so they're like a point. They're used for cleaning the energy around someone. Sometimes or quite often when a shaman is doing a healing, they'll have the person being healed will hold the Phurba, and sometimes with a mudra, and they'll hold the Phurba, and then the shaman is watching the energy of the person through the Phurba. So Phurba are magical wands that the shaman use for healing and for directing energy. They use them as a way of channeling their spirit or their soul into the objects, and as a way of connecting with the energy of the person that they're healing. So sometimes they'll get the person being healed to hold the Phurba like this, and then they tune into the Phurba and listen or watch the energy of the person that they're healing through the Phurba. They also use them to send them into the different worlds to find out information so the different causes maybe of the illness that the client is suffering from. And those causes might be physical, or they might be spiritual, or they might come from the world of ghosts or entities. So these objects have got an amazing symbolism. So the bottom part of most Phurba, they usually have 3 sides. This one's got 4 sides. This one's actually Tibetan. So on this one you have the Naga, which are snake gods, and they're normally twisting around each other, sometimes quite often with 7, they cross over 7 times. And the Naga represent the chakra and also the psychic energy inside the energy systems. This is a Makara, so it's a composite animal with lion and crocodile and fish and elephant. So you've got this composite animal here. So these Phurba are shamanic magical daggers, and they're used to heal and to pin down negative energy, and they're used a little bit like a sacred knife and a wand, and they're covered in really interesting symbols. So this one has the shaman praying but riding on his spirit horse. So the horse is often, like the drum, is referred to as the horse, and the shaman is travelling from one world to another. So he's focused and travelling through different dimensions. And then you have, in this case, you have a god surrounded by sacred plants, and another god with different expressions. So there's probably a meaning here, with some being vertical and some being diagonal. This is very unusual because you've got the same motif on the front and the back. So this probably represents the cobra and the fangs. You see the mouth and the tongue. And then this, you've got a crescent moon with a star or moon in the middle. On the other side, the sun, and then a whole load of different malas coming down with sacred objects. And this is also, you see the malas being worn by the shaman here, or the Godhead. So the malas all the way down. The head again, the malas all the way down. And then in this case you have a bamba, which is a sacred water vessel. So water is one of the most sacred things for the shaman, and they'll often collect water from very different types of, from lakes and from different rivers and from waterfalls and dew early in the morning, and from the intersection of different rivers. And they also carry, in different rituals, they carry the water from one location to another. So water is a symbol for purity and for the pure heart of the shaman. And in this case you've got sacred plants stuck in the top of the bamba. The bamba also represents Ganesh. So the spout of the bamba is Ganesh's trunk. And on this side you have another naga, so a snake god. So this is really unusual, and you've got a tongue that's out and a tongue that's sticking straight out. These are from an area near the Trishuli River, and they're Gurung Phurba. So you've got the snakes again, the Kundalini, which is the energy of the naga, the snake gods living in the earth. So they're the psychic energy of the chakras, representing healing and knowledge and magic. You have a staff with like a spear, and this one's very interesting. This is like a pot at the bottom, and the three spikes of the trident, which represent the central channel and the two side channels. The naga again, like a plant, and with the sun. So, and the plant again, and with the moon. And then in the centre, you normally have the lower portion, the middle portion, and the upper portion. So the lower is the lower world, also the triple world. The middle is the world of man, and the top part is the heavens. So on the top you've got the gods, with different facial expressions. Again, this one has he's a shaman praying but travelling, this time on a tiger. So it's like his sort of spirit animal. The centre has got like a vajra, so it's in the middle is like a seed beginning, and then duality, and then bound together with the never-ending knot. So the fabric represents the rainbow and also the energy of the naga, so it's the bridge between different worlds. So this is a Gurung Phurba, and this is very, very old. Now, the sacred threads here have probably been worn like a sort of promise for many, many different rituals. Probably they're coming from around the wrist, possibly worn like a janai, like the priests wear, and they change this once a year. And they've bound this round and round, so over many, many years. And then you have the fabric representing the rainbow again. The lower portion has got the naga at the bottom, the snake gods. Above this is a bird, so snakes and birds often sort of connected. And actually both snakes and birds do have that reptilian beginnings, and both have eggs, so they're seen as related to each other. Sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. So sometimes helping each other, and sometimes opponents of each other. And in this case you've got the snakes at the back, and then a bow and arrow. This one, very interestingly, the arrow is aimed down, so but it's also outward, so it's to do with the directing the energy of the shaman. And above it is a sun, so you've got the power of the sun going into the bow and arrow through the Kundalini and out through the tip of the Phurba. And then on the other sides you've got, interestingly, also a trident, but pointed down, pointed towards the tip. So very, very unusual, and a star above it. And on the other side, the bird, but with a trident, but pointing up this time. So every Phurba has a really unique qualities to it, where they've been designed and carved, sometimes by the shaman using them, sometimes as commissions, where the shaman gets a particular tool maker, like a magical tool maker, to first make the Phurba, so and make the other objects. So the Phurba is probably the most important object for Himalayan shaman, and it's like a spirit knife and a magic wand in one. So they use them for cleaning the energy, for cutting away negative energy around someone, for focusing the spirit, for travelling to find information. So you have like a Tibetan style dragon here at the bottom. That's very, very unusual. And above it, an upward pointing triangle. So usually the downward pointing triangle is for the feminine, and the upward pointed triangle is for the masculine. And the dragon is a symbol for limitless energy and for masculine energy. So it's like the creative force. On the back, you have two intertwining naga with diamond shapes in the middle for the crossing of the different chakra, and a very beautiful bamba or water vessel with the spout like the Ganesha's trunk and a sacred plant in the top. This is probably representing the water flowing out from the bamba. And then you have the trunk of Ganesh, very abstract, and teeth, big teeth. So it's a mixture of Ganesh plus a Makara, the eye of Ganesh. And you can see the never-ending knot underneath the fabric and the threads, and then the three different gods here. So the gods are sometimes the Hindu Trinity, and sometimes they're you have the two different things overlaying. So they're also gods of nature, so mountains and rivers and forests. And then the shaman is riding his spirit horse through the different worlds. This is extraordinarily rare. It's the first time I've ever had one of these. It's a large Phurba used as a guardian to place at the shaman's back. So this is Shiva, but in the form probably of Bhairava. And the reason I say that is on the back is a Mashan. So the Mashan are often depicted with these big grinning mouths. So Mashan is the spirit of the dead. It's like a very strong spirit that the shaman has called into their into their spiritual workforce. So they bring information, they can be sent to gather information, they can be sent to go and do jobs. So my friend Mohan Rai told me stories about a great shaman that his father knew in Bhutan, who had a very strong relationship with the Mashan, and he would get these Mashan to do all sorts of impossible work, like carrying huge amounts of grain across a river, and preparing sort of wood to build a house, and these tasks were done in a very short time. And but the Mashan are also extremely dangerous, so they can cause death as well as great good. So here you have it's like a mixture of a vulva or a vagina and a third eye inside a flame, and then you have a upwards and downwards pointing triangle with the unity of the cross, so the unity of the opposites, and downward pointing triangles, so for the feminine, and then upward pointing here, so the masculine and the feminine united, and above a guru figure. So it's a figure of one of the shamanic ancestors watching over them as a spiritual guard. And this would be stuck into probably into a bowl of rice at the back of the shaman. This is from the Gurung people. And it's like a guardian at his back, watching his back while he's doing the spiritual work. This is very, very old and very worn, very beautiful. So you've got the Naga again, the three sides, the snake coming up here with the fangs. The centre, you can see this nicely because it's very clear. So the centre has got this is the unified, it's like the unified unknown, so it's the masculine and the feminine expressed as the child principle, like the yin-yang Tao. And it's also the emptiness inside fullness. So you've got the unity and then duality, so all the different types of paired opposites, and then the duality is bound back together again in the symbol of the never-ending knot. So in shamanic terms, that often represents being true to your own path, not getting swayed by either good or bad. And then you have the godheads, and on the top this sort of top notch. So very, very beautiful. Again, you've got the Nagas, the trunk of Ganesh as a spiral, but also this is probably also like the Naga, like the crown of the Naga, and another figure here on the top, another shamanic figure. But this time he's sat on top of what looks like sweet corn. Now I've had other Phurba with this design, and I don't know what that means. It's probably connected to nourishment and fertility, so perhaps this would be a Phurba that is used in connection to bringing extra crops and maybe the abundance of food and that sort of thing. But a very unusual symbolism. So here you've got a metal tip made out of forged iron, because they'll also pin this down. So sometimes they'll summon a spirit or an entity that is causing illness for the client, and sometimes they bargain with them, sometimes they threaten them, sometimes they negotiate with them, sometimes they give them a gift. And so you've got the metal tip, and then made of forged iron, and this is very worn, but it's the head of Ganesh, and above it the sun, and then Naga again, and then with the trishul, but with it's a double-sided damaru, a double-sided drum, and then with a bamba again, a water vessel, and with flowers which are also in the shape like a trishul. And then in this case you have animal heads with horns, but only two. And one without horns. So one is like a bird, and then two which are horns or ears, almost cat-like. So that's very, very interesting. And then the shaman figure is sat on a two-sided cylinder. So you can see, very interesting, and they have a mala around, and they're in a sort of praying posture. So super interesting. And then with the Naga coming up to the moon, and oh no, this is not a Naga, it's a centipede. So you see the little legs and the little pinchers. So the centipede is often connected to night and to darkness and to poison. And then you have Ganesh, and on the back the Naga. So sacred poisons also connect to Shiva. So this is very, very interesting. It's about transformation and change. You see a centipede here again. So the trishul below with the metal tip, and the sacred poisons above, and also related to the moon and a star. and the trunk of Ganesh as a spiral, so representing infinity and time, the intertwining naga coming up, like the energy up the back of the spine. And on the other side you have a scorpion and a fish. So again, symbols for sacred poison and a sun, the trunk of Ganesh. And then the gods all the way around, and with this time 2 discs, so maybe suns or suns and moons, and a praying shamanic figure, this time with a little topi, like a traditional Nepali hat. Here again you have the naga, with the heads coming outwards this time, like guardians. The 3 sides, so the masculine, the feminine and the Tao principle, or past, present and future. Very interesting, beautiful knot designs, and the thunderbolt or Vajra, so that's like representing limitless energy. So it's a real symbol for power, and the shaman often use like this. Sometimes they'll focus like this, sometimes they'll hold it with different mudra. And you see with the beginning of a trunk and long fangs, and sometimes this is more like a dragon, as it is here. And then in the middle section you've got a Vajra or thunderbolt, and this one's very clear because it comes from Tibet, so it's has a sort of Buddhist background. So the center of the Vajra is like the unified self. So it's like infinite space and time. And then this is duality, so it goes from 1 to 2, and from 2 to 4. So you've got the unity and timelessness running through the entire Phurba. So unity and then duality, so all the paired opposites, the yin and yang, masculine, feminine, positive, negative. And then the 4 are like the 4 directions and the central spoke, so like the 5 elements as well. And then on the top here, you usually have 3 gods. This has got 4 gods. So this is the transcendent aspect. So you've got the lower section, which is like the triple world. The middle section, which is like so the lower section is the underworld. The overall thing is the triple world. The middle section is the world of man and animals and nature, and the upper section is the world of the gods. And whatever's above this is usually some sort of transcendent being. This is a good example where you've got the Kundalini again. This one has the snakes, which is also slightly bird-like. So sometimes you have the Garuda and the Naga are linked together. Then you've got the snakes crossing over at the back, snakes coming up here again. And on this one you have a sort of shell-like design in the middle. This is quite unusual. Maybe this is, I think it probably lotuses. And then you have a shaman figure here with a top notch. So it's in a sort of yogic position with cross-legged in the lotus position, and with the hands clasped like a mudra, and a mala, either of rudraska or of soap nut, and the top notch here, which is like transcended consciousness. So they call Phurbas like this a guru Phurba. So this is like the guru figure, probably the embodiment of a powerful shaman from their tradition. And then the fabric represents the rainbow. So sometimes the fabric is attached during different specific rituals. Sometimes it might be like a sacred threads that they've worn maybe for a year and then they've attached. But this also represents the rainbow and the psychic energy of the Naga, with a big fat shamanic figure holding a drum with a sun and a moon and a trident on it, and faces, but this time on 4 sides around the middle section, like the Tantien, and a 3-sided point at the bottom, and very, very unusual. I've actually don't know anything about this because it's the only time I've ever seen one. So within all of these you have multiple levels of meaning, and the particular combination of symbols relate to the energy of the shaman. Sometimes the shaman makes the Phurba themselves. Sometimes there's a particular group of shaman who specialise in making objects. So sometimes it's like that. Quite often the shaman will find objects that they incorporate into their other sacred objects. So I've have shaman friends who have dreamt, for instance, of finding a particular crystal in a particular place, and they've gone down to a river, and then they go into the river and along the bank exactly where their dream has told them, and they dig in a particular place, and then they find a crystal, and they put that crystal on their altar, or they use it to focus energy. Sometimes they put inside the drums. So this one has a spiral which represents eternity, and the spiral is quite often also represents the trunk of Ganesh. So you can see on this one you've got an eye and a spiral again, like a trunk, and very abstracted here. But if I can find another one, there's here. So you can see here you have Ganesh, here you just have the spiral, and then again Ganesh above. And this one's very unusual because they've combined Ganesh, but on the back you have bird's wings and a bird's tail. So you've got the symbolism of Garuda and Ganesh working together, and you see again the snakes entwined with a star above. On this case you've got on the sides you've got the snake as a staff of office, so an emblem of power for the shaman. And then this is very unusual to have Ganesh and then Ganesh again in the middle. So you've generally got this triple format, so the lower section and with the 3-sided blades, the middle section, and then the gods, and then with the gods some sort of transcendent power. So here you have the 3 gods, and above it you have a cobra. So the cobra representing the Naga, and also transformed consciousness of the Kundalini. So the energy coming all the way through to the Kundalini, rising through the chakras, and the cobra's head like the ascendant crown chakra. So again, very, very, very unusual, very, very beautiful and powerful Phurba. So this is very, very interesting. It's a Gurun Phurba. It's the only time I've come across one of these. This is probably Shiva, and the reason I say that is because on the back we have a Mashan. So a Mashan is like a spirit of the dead. It's a powerful dead spirit, and the shaman calls the Mashan to do their work. So sometimes the shaman maybe can't go into a certain environment because it's very dangerous, and they'll call an army of Mashan to go and do certain work. So the Mashan have great energy and power, and my shaman friend Mohan Rai said that it's a little bit like conscription in the army. They don't particularly want to do it, so they can be very dangerous for the shaman and dangerous even for the person you're healing. But he said it's good for them. So it helps transform their spirit or their soul, so they get a better incarnation. So this Phurba has a guru figure again on the top, like actually a naked figure, and an eye inside a flame here, a lot of downward pointing triangles which normally represent the feminine, and then a balance between upwards and downwards pointing triangles, so a balance of opposites, and four-sided diamonds, which is also like the elements and the opposites, and then the Shiva figure and the Mashan on the back. So this would sit behind the shaman, between the altar and the person that they're healing, and it's literally like guarding his back. So they sometimes think of they call Bhairava, that's the fierce aspect of Shiva, to as a sheet of flame to watch the back of the shaman while he's doing the healing. So he's guarding his front, and Bhairava's watching his back. So they'll quite often use special woods to carve, but sometimes they use other objects which they already think of as holding power. So this Phurba is quite unusual, very, very old, and it's made of a deer horn. So you've got the raw horn here. It's actually very heavy, and you have a little bit of diamond-shaped decoration below, and then a seated figure in a sort of meditation pose on the top, like a guru figure. So sometimes they'll use any pointed object, including knives, and sometimes teeth or horns, even pointed sticks. They'll use that if they don't have a Phurba, they'll use that also as a way of directing energy. But in general, they have a lot of awareness of yin and yang within the objects. So yang objects are generally things like beaks and claws and teeth and horns, and yin objects, things which are more vulvic and receptive in shape. Another example of a horn, very, very worn. This would have been 2 or 3 times the length, from a type of antelope. It has a Garuda figure on the bottom and a piece of forged iron chain, but this would be used usually by a Tamang shaman and worn at their back, so as a sort of protector, but also used as a Phurba for directing energy, for cleaning things, for pinning down negative energy. And you can see this is many hundreds of years old and has been worn down over the centuries. So this is very interesting because you have a dragon on the bottom. I don't think I've ever had another Phurba with a dragon, and a horse and rider at the top. So this is also Gurung, but from an area near the Trishuli River, and the horse and the shamanic rider is often depicted as the drum is often called the horse, the spirit horse of the shaman, and they'll sometimes talk about the drum as their horse or as their steed, and they're riding their drum through the different worlds. So this represents riding through the different worlds. And again, you have the 3 different faces of the gods with very different expressions. Now, these are sometimes the Hindu Trinity, sometimes also gods of rivers and mountains and forests, so animistic gods. And they're overlaid, so you've got they're both the things at the same time. Again, you can see the never-ending knot here for eternity and being true to your path. In the middle there would be like a Vajra, and then you've got the fragments of fabric for the rainbow bridge. On the back, this is a bamba, so it's a water vessel with a spout, and the spout represents the trunk of Ganesh. The water is one of the most sacred things for the shaman, and inside you have flowering plants. So they'll put the medicine plants inside the water, inside the vase, and they'll sometimes put that on the crown of the head, and then do the mantra, and the mantra pulls the illness out into the water and the plants, and later they pour that away. So here, this is very unusual. You've got the snakes, in this case, aimed inwards. Quite often they're aimed outwards, and the dragon on the other side, and the double snakes aimed inwards with the bamboo above. And here, representing Ganesh, but this time with very strange teeth on both sides here. So quite an extraordinary, and I'll just show you a comparison of another one which is from the same part of Nepal. So this one has again different gods, but depicted as a rider. So it's both the trunk of Ganesh and the arms of the rider, and then on top of that is the intertwined nagas, another sort of eye of Ganesh. So you can see it's a multiple, and then there's a star inside a sun, and a star again inside a sun, and the eye again. So and yet the two together become another face. And you see with these two shapes and the teeth, with representing the Mashan. So, and this is a Vajra, so there's probably a bell somewhere on here. Healing plants. Sometimes the Phurba are very alike the drum handles. So the drum handles on these traditional shamanic drums, the drums are called Dengaru, and they're two-sided with a Phurba handle, and you see the structure of the Phurba handle is the same as the structure of a traditional Phurba, like that. And sometimes this is dug into the ground, sometimes they touch the Phurba against the person while they're drumming, so the vibration goes into them. Sometimes it's used to suck out the negative energy into the drum, and then they release that. Sometimes it's used to put the positive energy of the drum into the person. So the drum itself is used as a healing tool. And you have the same structure. Now sometimes the drum handles, the drums maybe have been broken or worn out, and you sometimes get the drum handles like this, and someone has cut the top off of this. So they have like a long wooden post that goes inside and is fixed, and sometimes people cut that off because Phurba are quite rare and valuable, and the drum handles cost less than the Phurba. But they also will use the drum handles as Phurba sometimes. But yeah, so you can see that was a drum handle and has now been used for some time as a Phurba. So I've just got a few other objects that are sometimes used for Phurba when a shaman hasn't got a Phurba. So this is a shamanic knife. So they'll use the point of the knife, and also sometimes, so that in this case, the horn of the deer would normally be seen as a masculine object, but the metal is harder and more and sharper. So in this case, this would be used for cutting and for cleaning and for removing negative energy, and this would be for sort of smoothing out and the softer sides of it. So it's like a sharp tool and a softer tool, so a masculine and a feminine. And the same actually for the Phurba. So sometimes you'll have a shaman will use the pointed end for destroying and cutting and cleaning, and the the head with the gods, the top, is then the feminine in relation to the blade end, and is used for smoothing out and healing and sealing up. So the same is true for this beautiful shamanic knife. You have another shamanic knife. This one is from the Mugger people, and it's probably 50, 60 years old. The blade might be very much older than that. The top they've cast in aluminium, so they probably melted down cans or something like that. And you have a shamanic figure, so you have the head of the shaman on the top, and his arms praying, and the legs here at the bottom, very abstract. And then the knife represents his energy going forth into the. So again, you've got the two ends of the knife having two different functions. And then again, sometimes you'll have something like a bird beak. So this is used, it's a hornbill. You get hornbill in sort of in the Terai area, in the jungles of Nepal, and they're fruit eating, so they have these very big beaks. This is just the top part. They're used by the shaman to represent Garuda, and they're also used in meditation to travel. So the shamanic flying from one dimension to another. So they'll meditate with this, and sometimes they have wooden representations of the same thing. But I'm showing that because on some of the Phurba, they also have the Garuda, and it's also used. Again, if you didn't have a Phurba with you, they might use the pointed end of this in the same way as they would use there's a Phurba with a deer's horn. So the pointed end can be used for charging up energy. So one time when I was very ill in the mountains, and the shaman did mantra over my water, and he stuck his knife in the water and stirred the water using the knife, channeling the energy of his energy through the blade into the water, and then they gave me the water. So it's seen as a sort of a receptacle for channeling and charging energy, and things like deer horns and teeth and bones. Everything is seen for the quality of the energy that it has. And again, this is a Phurba that I've never had another one like this. It's got a metal tip made of forged iron, and on the top is a monkey. And then these are symbolic mirrors. So this one has a sun on one side. It may have had a moon, but it's now very worn out. So you have these three discs. I'm told this is Mugger people. So it's from the area of far west Nepal up towards the Tibetan border. And you have a monkey on the top. So very, very unusual. And the monkey in this case is like the spirit animal, like the guide animal, connecting the shaman to nature. This is very interesting. You have a scorpion, and I don't know whether that's a bird or a fish. It looks almost more fish-like than bird, but I suspect that it's a bird because that looks like wings. Sometimes these things can be quite abstract. And on the top you have a metal bottom of it, and then a sun, so Surya. Above the sun is the moon, a damaru, which is the two-sided drum where they twist them and they make a sort of tick 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 sound, used both in Hinduism and in Buddhism, and by the shaman sometimes, and in Tantra. This symbol is quite often connected to the Tripple for Shiva. And then you have a water pot. Now, that type of water pot is often made of copper, and it's used for holding early morning water. Sometimes dew is gathered up into a pot like that and seen as sort of vitalizing. And you have three, this is probably plants coming up the top, but it's again quite unusual to have the three different sides. So that's on the back. Here you have a centipede with many legs, and the pinchers at the top, so representing sort of night and sacred poison, and a scorpion. So this is a very Shivic, so you've got sacred poison again for life, death and transformation, and the meditating shaman on the top with fragments of cloth around his waist, linking him to the triple world and to the world of the underworld, the world of man and the heavens. And he's sitting meditating, praying, probably doing mantra, and then with the mala. So this Phurba is very beautiful and very unusual. So you have on the triple-sided blade, representing the masculine and the feminine and the child, so yin yang Tao, and also the triple world, you have Ganesh, you see with the spiraling trunk. Now Ganesh is often seen as the first shaman, and he started out as one type of being, so he's the son of Shiva and Parvati. And while Shiva was away for thousands of years meditating, Ganesh was growing up into a young man, and when Shiva came back, his mother was bathing and he'd been asked to guard the door, and Shiva came back and didn't know who Ganesh was and cut off his head in a fit of rage. And then the mother was obviously upset, and so Shiva had to find him another head and found an elephant's head. So he's seen as having started as one type of being, and then he's gone through a death and transformation. So he's often seen as the first shaman by Shaman in the Himalayas, and he's holding a staff for the snakes. Now Ganesh is also related to the base chakra, so the staff and the Kundalini coming up from the base chakra, rising up into the navel, and so Ganesh has a big fat belly, and with the energy gathering in the belly and then rising up. So he's connected to that transformative process of the Kundalini. And you've got the snakes rising up at the back, crossing over for each chakra, and a star to connect it to wisdom and insight and vision. Now this is very unusual, because above this one now you have another Ganesh, and interestingly the way they depict the trunks is often the same way that they depict the front of a cobra. So you've got the trunks coming up, but this Ganesh actually has a Garuda back, so he has wings and a tail. So very unusual. I've never seen that another time. Then you've got the faces of the gods, and on the top the Kundalini, the crown of a cobra coming up, twirling around in a clockwise direction, and over the top a sort of stupa-like centre, like a chorten. So the spirits, and he's rising up over the crown. So you often get the image of the serpent protecting over the top of the head of Buddha, and sometimes over the top of other gods. So, and then the pieces of fabric represent the rainbow bridge, and the energy of the Naga again, making a bridge between different worlds. So very interesting and beautiful. So this is a sort of a Phurba made out of a antelope horn, and this would have been maybe 3 or 4 times the length. maybe 3 times the length, and over hundreds of years has worn out while they've stuck it into things and so on. But on the top you have probably silver, and then a forged iron work with leather, and a little Garuda in bronze attached at the top. So this is very, very interesting, and it's used, often stuck in the belt of the shaman as like across his back. So it's literally guarding his back, so it's seen as an object of vitality and strength. It's quite an important object or important animal for the shaman. Quite often the skins of the shamanic drums were deer skins, and sometimes each drum has a male side and a female side, and sometimes made actually of a female animal and a male animal. So the quality of positive and negative, or male and female, or yin and yang, is very important in the objects. So in this case, the point would be the masculine end, and then the figure, the guru figure, would be the feminine end. Again, a different type of meditating guru figure, but with a very elaborate crown. I'm not sure what the symbolism is of this crown. It's got 3 holes running through it and a hole right in the top. I've never seen that another time. So again, extraordinarily interesting, and you have a godhead in the middle, probably a sun figure or Shiva figure, surrounded by an intricate knot of naga, never-ending knot made up of snakes, and the spiral for time and for the trunk of Ganesh, and a spiral design here below a sun, so you've got the eternity and the masculine energy and vitality of the sun, and then the spiral for eternity, and in this case a sort of checkered design which often represents the balance of male and female energy. So the checkers are going in different directions, but they're combined. So in Bali, for instance, they have a black and a white and a grey fabric which is woven, and it represents yin, yang and Tao, so the balance of opposites. And then the iron tip made out of forged iron. I'm not sure what that design is. This is a plaited design, possibly connected to Naga. And again, coming up, this is probably a sun with yes, a sun I can see because it's got the moon above it. So again, a very interesting and unusual depiction of the sun with 2 circles inside each other. Sometimes you have to really look at these things because you'll have symbolism that relates to other Phurba, but which has its own original form. And then in this case, you've got a very condensed seat that the guru figure is sat on, but it's got the same structure as a Vajra. So the central ring is the infinite unity, and then the division of the opposites, and then these other bands that probably to do with the unity again of the opposites. And then in that case, the whole Phurba represents time and timelessness, so the infinite void running through the Phurba, so it's travelling from one dimension to another. I actually carry a Phurba around with me everywhere, even in my camera bag as a sort of guardian. So here's a very interesting. You've got like the eye and the trunk of Ganesh, but then a great big jaw and huge teeth, almost like the way that the Mashan are depicted. And on the front, the sort of banded designs. So you've got this composite animal, like a bird and a snake and an elephant all in one. And then in this case, the trunk comes all the way down the front. So very, very interesting. You have to really look at these things sometimes. And then all this fabric, very dirty, but it's been used for a long, long time. And sometimes you have knots, so this one's got like a coin inside, probably given as some sort of devotional thing, or maybe made of silver or of copper. So copper is sometimes seen as the blood of Shiva, and silver for the moon and gold for the sun. So yeah, look, there's another coin inside that one as well, and another coin, so 3 coins now. So it's super, super interesting.